Now with me in the studio, I have Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Jide Ologun, legal practitioner and national development advocate, and Professor Bola Akintola is back with us today, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and currently a Professor of International Relations at the Achievers University in Owo, Ondo State. Prof has been busy in Owo, raising another generation of students and scholars. That's why he's not been on the program. But he's in town, and he has identified with his This Day Life family. Prof, good to see you. Very good to see you indeed.
It's a pleasure coming back.
Yeah, very quickly. We had one guest today, I Chief Johnson Chukwu, who looked at three major topics. One, new rates alert for persons who want to take driver's licenses or who want to collect license plate numbers ordered by the Joint Tax Board to take effect from June the 8th. And what they're saying is that if you want to get a driver's license, you may pay as much as 21,000 naira. If you want to get a plate number and you want it personalized, you may pay as much as 400,000 naira. If it is government will pay, 80,000. Private and commercial vehicles may even pay something in the range of 30,000. And all of this, tricycles for 3 years will pay 7,000. 5 years they will pay 11,000 naira. Increase in the cost of production is their excuse. Security factors, they say, have been added to the new plates and the new driver's license. But Nigerians are saying this is a period of economic hardship. And the objective of the modernization, as the administration referred to it, of the tax regime in Nigeria was not to impose further punishment on Nigerians. And that this is like adding to the tax burden of Nigerians. Secondly, we looked at the fact that states and local councils are owing up to about 4.4 trillion naira. Despite the fact that the government says, we had paid 3.4 trillion naira dollars to the IMF, and for subsidy savings, I've also helped these states and local councils to get more money. But what we are hearing is that states and local councils are in debt domestically, and that this could affect their fiscal stability. This could also affect their ability, to deliver on services. What should the states do? What is the way forward? Where is the fault line? These were the things we discussed. And third, we talked about the interface between business and politics, between business figures, the private sector, and the public sector, using the example of the ongoing rift, collapse of amity between Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, and also SpaceX, and his good friend, President Donald Trump. They worked together for 130 days. That ended May 31, Friday. Elon Musk, having worked in that government for 130 days, as the spirit behind the Department of Government Efficiency. Now he says that the proposed big, beautiful bill by President Trump is a disgusting abomination that is likely to drive up deficit and also derail all the achievements of Doge that he oversaw. Those were the major issues. Let me start with Professor Akintola, now that he's back on the bench.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure coming back to renew the discussions. On the interventions of Chief Johnson Chukwu, I agreed with him on a number of points. If we look at the issue of rates, new rates for driving licenses, I agree with his position on the basis that the reasons given by government are quite tenable. They are talking in terms of probably introducing ships to enhance security. They are talking about cost of production. They are tenable. But when you look at, you see the implication, not just for people. The issue is that driving licenses in Nigeria, the quality of driving licenses, the quality of plate numbers. In fact, anything done by government in Nigeria has never been qualitative. They give you any ID card, whether it's for health sector along 3 years is fading. They give you plate numbers. Within 1-2 years, it's faded. The color is off. Then you will be arrested on the streets to say, look, you have not gone back to repaint your plate numbers. I think this is the issue we should be talking about. If, for instance, the government now wants to address that, give us very qualitative plate number, well, I wouldn't be opposed to that. When it comes to special plate numbers, at the end of the day, you discover that each state actually determines how much you pay. You know, getting plate numbers in Lagos is costlier than getting them in Ondo State, where I come from. It's not the same. The papers, how much you pay for your driving license, they may have a central coordinating office here and there, but it's not the same charges. So whatever they want to charge, for as long as that they are good enough and they are giving us, you know, qualitative products, there wouldn't be any problem. On the issue of those who have the means, for instance, people who can afford to pay, like he described you as one of the good millionaires. You can get Ruben Abati 001, Ruben Abati 002, and pay 400,000. So you see, if you want
human
yes, he call it you know, ego-driven you know, Nigerians. You want special number, you pay for it. But in terms of the general plate, you know, who has to pay 30,000, no, 15,000, 21,000 all along, is fair enough for me. If, in terms of final product, it will be okay. Now, on the second issue raised by Chief Johnson Shuku, relationship between public sector and private sector, or in terms of personal relationship between Musk and Trump. He used the word eccentric. He sees the two of them as eccentric. To a great extent, he can hold that opinion. But you see, the problem there, and I agree with him when he said he would take side with Musk on the bills. You know, the critical point is that Donald Trump is not simply a problem unto himself. It's a problem to the good people of America. I say a problem to the good people of America, not to all the Americans. No. When some people, for instance, will want to carry protectionism to the extent that it will be detrimental to the survival of other peoples of the world, well, you will agree with him that he's an eccentric person that should be thinking like that. To that extent, I can agree. But the bottom line is that for as long as selfishness is the driving factor, you know, you cannot expect anything better. Chief Johnson Shuku does not want to partner with any government, particularly government of Nigeria, for reasons we do know that well. He had partnered with the government of Nigeria in various cases, and he had not been paid. You can just imagine that you engage in businesses, you sanctity of agreements, the government will not comply with it. And you even try to challenge him to say, is he trying to describe, to call the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration irresponsible? He answered smartly, not saying yes, not saying no, but the arguments lent credence to irresponsibility. You see, there is no big deal about this issue of irresponsibility. In my column today, I think I'm one of the Nigerians that have been most oppressed by all the governments of Nigeria. I've been saying this. So if you are saying government is irresponsible, what word do you want to use other than say irresponsible? I have drawn attention to the fact that federal government of Nigeria, as far back as 1994, when Lateef Jakande was Minister of Works and Housing, they placed advert in many newspapers asking Nigerians who were interested to buy medium houses, low level, medium level, high level. They collected money. I am saying I was one of them. And in this particular case, you collected money. Lateef Jakande said medium houses will only cost 200,000 using, self-help, doing so. But by the time he was removed, Abdul Karim Adiza replaced him. He jacked up the price from 200 to 800, therefore increasing the deposit from 40,000 to 200. Federal government collected my money. We are in 2025. At this time I'm talking about, the government didn't build any house, the federal government didn't refund any money, and you are now telling me you want me to believe that government is responsible. That is gross irresponsibility. In fact, that is stealing. So I share the sentiment.
That was
1994.
It's not Tinubu.
We are not saying,
you cannot blame Tinubu
no,
for the offense of another administration.
Please hold on. Please, the principle of political governance is defined by continuity. All right? Now, you stole money in 1994. We can take the thief to court thereafter. It doesn't matter. So when we are talking about political governance, if Johnson Shuku doesn't want to partner with the federal government, these are the reasons. He contracted something, he did business with federal government in the past, and they never paid. Now he decided not to have any relationship. And then you will come to be preaching the Bible, gospel, the gospel of patriotism. No, it doesn't work. That is why we have problem in the country. Tinubu is trying. I can tell you that, look, in my column today, I said that Wike is a problem, the governor. You go, you rush, you advertise names of people who you describe as defaulters for not paying ground rent. Okay, fine. I paid ground rent up till December 2024. Now, they have not given me up to this time I'm talking about certificate of occupancy. You are threatening that you will revoke CFO that you have not given. So there's no coordination at the level of government. That's the issue. So to help government, for God's sake, this is what we should be doing. Draw their attention to it. Tinubu should look at it. They should empanel a committee to see that.
Okay. Prof, except that there is a distinction between the private sector and the personal. You are talking about personal matters.
No.
These are personal matters.
You see, when we are talking about
persons, they didn't give you, or the ground rent, government
private individual and private company, they are defined by privacy. It's not governmental. All right? Non-governmental organizations, governmental organizations. Non-governmental organizations are comprised of individuals like this. But the bottom line there is that, look, how do we relate with the public? How do you relate with the government? how does government protect the interests of the individuals? When private sector organizations like Johnson Shuku is telling us he's not interested in having any rapport with the federal government, that should tell you something. Something went wrong there. So Musk and Donald Trump, they are for America. It's their business. They know what they do. But they use people like us, people like our countries, as instruments, all right, for their own growth and development. And this is where we should look at how, that's why I love your question, relationship between the private sector, the politician, you know, and the government there. Your reasoning is quite tenable in this case to see how do we learn lessons from Donald Trump's relationship with Musk. So whether, for instance, as he's trying to say, they should have brought Musk in to guide, to advise in the drawing, in the thinking, in the making of the bill, that should not be much of a big deal.
Okay, let's listen to Professor Aworawo. But don't come and tell us they also seized your land or they're asking you to come and pay ground rent too.
Well, I'm very careful in interacting with the government too, but so I don't have anything they are holding. Anyway, I would like to begin with the local government debt, state and local government debt. You know, last week we talked about the debt that of the lending that federal government is proposing to carry out. $21 billion. And we said, this is unprecedented. There's never been a time we can remember any government borrowing so much at the same time. In fact, all our debts in 2003, 2004 that President Obasanjo was very worried about and he arranged to negotiate and pay and write off some, was all put together $34 billion. All we ever borrowed from independence till 2003, 2004. So to want to borrow $21 billion in one fell swoop is very concerning. Some people say, oh, they will use, these monies will be used for developmental purpose and all that. In 1995, 1996, when an audit of our debt was carried out, what the monies were borrowed for and what they were used for, the result revealed that less than 10% of all the projects ever took off. So the issue of the money being used for developmental purpose really didn't occur. So we should not deceive ourselves when people say they want to borrow money for development. Show us the development that all the ones borrowed in the past was used to carry out. And in any case, in that $21 billion that they are proposing to borrow, I saw a part of it saying that they will use part of the money to pay pension for pensioners.
Yeah,
so that already tells you that it is not money for developmental projects. A lot of it is not for development. And even the ones that were, that means they say for development projects, sometimes the projects never take off. When that report was released, with projects to be cited, so and so, kilometer 3 between Ogbomoso or your road, when you go there, the place is not even cleared at all for the majority of the projects. So we should be concerned when we're talking about debt. And like I said last week, in this year's budget, we'll spend about 5 to 6 trillion to service debt. Do you know what 5 to 6 trillion would do if we're not to use that money to service debt? And that was why under former President Obasanjo, they were concerned that a third of our budget was to be used to service debt, and it didn't make sense. That was why they negotiated that and decided to give us a clean bill of health as far as debt is concerned. Now we have returned deeper than ever. That process that started extensively under former President Buhari has not stopped. If borrowing is not, we should not be worried. Why were we rejoicing when the $3 billion was paid to IMF 2 weeks ago? We were rejoicing because it is good not to owe. Now governments are unhinged about debt. Now states and local governments are also now gone deep. Who will call who to order? There is the need to call people to order. Because like I always say, anybody will have a logical mind in government can go and borrow money and do 1 road, do 3 roads, they will remember him for. When the money is borrowed, it really doesn't count for much. How to create wealth and use that wealth for development is what defines a genius of a leader. Not one that goes borrowing all over the place and does a few projects and say, oh, I did this, I did that. Generating money from within, creating wealth and using it for development is the hallmark of a great leader. And that is what these people should be thinking about. Magufuli is gone in Tanzania. When we say use the Magufulian approach to development, we are saying use an approach that creates wealth from within and use it for development without borrowing. So it's a virtue to be without debt, if possible. And so government needs to pay attention to this. Nobody's calling anybody to order. There is the need for us to call the government to order. Let them not just come, borrow money, do a few things, and take all the money away, and then we are saddled with the debt to be paid after they leave government. That is it on the debt. Then Musk versus Trump. It was always going to happen. It's just that we predicted it. But we didn't need to even come this quickly. Because the two, when you see the character flaw, it was always going to happen. And it speaks to the point also that we have made about a government being coordinated, a government being based on knowledge, facts. Now, the reason why the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE that Trump headed, was set up was to reduce wastage, excess, and all that. The thing was not properly thought out. Some of the things they call wastages were actually some of the most important things. For instance, research. They cut research drastically, calling it wastage. Somebody must be very stupid to think that research is wastage. In 2005, I went to Harvard to give a lecture. I ran into a Nigerian who took me to MIT and showed me what research was done, how the atomic bomb and all of those things. These are not things that yield fruit immediately. But when the good things that they produce will come, they are usually phenomena. So those things were not even probably thought out in the first place. That's one. Then second, a government that is talking about efficiency, reducing reducing the deficit and all that, will now have a bill that will further increase the deficit. That's what Chief John Chukwu was talking about. That it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense that a government that comes and says, "Oh, we want to, be efficient. We want to reduce the debt deficit," and then comes to the bill that further, expands the debt tremendously. There is, a mismatch, and that is the point I've always made. That I'm surprised that in the U.S. this kind of thing can be happening. And then third, Musk. I think Musk is making a mistake. Trump doesn't have a third term to fight for, so he has nothing to lose. I don't agree with Chief Chukwu that Musk will not lose. He's already losing. The shares are down. He's already losing. The EV mandate, and that was actually what annoyed him. Mm-hmm. The EV mandate, which will have allowed him to sell Tesla, people are, we're changing to green energy. People must buy Tesla, and of course, Trump does not believe in it. I'm surprised that the world's richest man is not probably as smart as we think. He ought to have known that Trump does not believe in environmental protection and all those things, and that it was going to affect, the mandate. He actually set a proposal, really. Well, I don't know what they call it mandate, but that is what it is. He should have known that Trump was going to, cancel that. That was what annoyed him most. Yeah. So the bill is big, but I don't think very beautiful, because they call it a big, beautiful bill. Anyway, so but we hope that the Americans will continue to insist on what is right, so that their country is not taken too far away from where it should be headed before Trump's period expires. There needs to be action to enable government see what the right thing to be done should be done, so that as for private, public, of course, the public and private can partner. The line there is really very thin. People say government should have no business in business. That's not true. There are times that government needs to, be in business. For instance, 2009, in the aftermath of the global economic crisis, if government had no business in business, America would not be where it is today. The government had to have business in business to clean up and start afresh, and stabilize the American economy after that. It depends on the time, the season, the conditions, the issues that will determine how much, business government will have in business. But of course,
what is normally said, requested, is for government to make the environment conducive.
Good.
Okay, so
yes.
the role of government
is
basically at the level of conducive environment to ensure that at least private sector businessmen
are able to carry on.
Precisely.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, government too can get involved in business to some extent, depending on the situation. Anyway, finally, the What's the last issue now? There were 3 of them.
About license,
okay,
plate
license.
numbers and driver's licenses.
Yes, the burden is so much. I agree with Professor Akitayewa that the gap is not really too wide when you look at the cost of production of everything. But the burden is much. The burden is for everything has gone up and what people earn has not gone up. That is just my worry. The price itself is not high when you look at, when you compare with the prices of other things and of course cost of production they talked about. During the week, some of them, told me to park and said my plate number was getting faded and all that. And I told them, you gave me to me. I'm arranging to get another one. You said I should not drive my car until I get a new. They said, no, we're not saying that, but it has faded. I said, but you gave it to me. They said, no, it was Lagos State government that did that my own. It was not FRS. I just laughed. I said, my friend, just leave the road, let me pass. I will get a new. So anyway, but the long and short is that the burden on Nigerians is very heavy. So whatever government can do to lighten the burden will be appreciated.
Okay, Professor Aworawo, on this question of Donald Trump versus Elon Musk, I summarize it by saying, you're saying, well, who is Elon Musk? His business is already losing business. Stock prices have tumbled since his fight with President Trump, which is a fact. So are you saying Trump has presidential immunity? He's more or less a monarch. That's what the presidential system provides in some countries. And Musk, all things considered, is just an ordinary citizen fighting the most powerful man in the world, the president of the biggest economy in the world. Are you saying this is an unequal match of opponents?
Certainly. It's unequal. You can see it. Trump is carrying on. If this were Trump's first term, then Musk would probably hold a Trump card and say, okay, let us see how you get the second term. Because he has always been boasting that he made Trump president. So, okay, let us wait for him. But Trump is having his second term. So what does Trump lose? He simply goes on. And, they will cancel, and Trump is not even known to overlook. They're going to cancel many contracts that Musk has. Of course, they're talking about deporting him. I'm not sure they can deport him. He's a citizen of the United States. He's a citizen of 3 countries, United States, Canada, and South Africa. It won't be easy to say, you want to deport a citizen. I mean, what will you say he has done anyway? So that's for deporting, no. But
he can go to court.
But
do in Nigeria.
No, that's but the fight is asymmetric. Trump has far more power.
You cannot deport a citizen. It's not possible.
I'm just joking. But you can go to court. That's what they tell you in Nigeria. Mr. Ologun.
Thank you. On this Trump and Elon Musk issue, we should look beyond the 2 personalities. Interestingly, Elon Musk is handling some sensitive facilities in the US that even touch on security and the brilliance of the pride of America. And he even made a threat recently, but because of the comments of stakeholders, he had to step down on that. So Donald Trump needs to monitor that very well. And I wished Elon Musk never went to ride on the back of a tiger, because the elders have a saying that when you are riding on the back of a tiger, you get down either when the tiger is tired or dead. And that is what happens when a prominent businessman goes into partnership or collaboration with politicians. And that respect I hold for persons like Dangote, who will not venture into that environment. And we call such all governments in office. We are ready to collaborate with you. And I hope Elon has learned his lessons. Donald Trump may not change. He has his peculiar characteristics, even right from his days of show business, fire. So I doubt if he respects relationships to the extent that he cannot damn anybody. But I'm just asking that he should look at the impact on America, because it appears now that a mystery around the American power is being exposed. Because like a comment that was given, that you don't shout at someone you can whisper to. And that shouting is beginning to reveal some weaknesses now. And that is for America. Back to Nigeria on this issue of increase in obtaining driver's license plate numbers. I want to ask a question. The countries that produce them for us, let's even assume the cost is high.
You cannot produce plate number in Nigeria. Are you sure?
You know, that is I'm coming somewhere. The countries that produce, do they have a standard control, quality control? For instance, Dangote produces petroleum products in Nigeria. He is now exporting. So he's earning revenue. So what happens to our own refineries? And when we are producing, what quality? I had a similar experience with Professor Aworawo, but I won't be patient with FRSC. The plate number is fading. The question, did I print it in my bedroom? The answer is no. So it appears, and that is where the concept of perception in public relations comes in, that the government is just interested in revenue. I challenge us. Even the cost being rolled out is a lie. I've spoken about official rate and officials' rate here in this studio. Go and try to obtain a driver's license. Go and try to do change of ownership. So why are you putting this burden on citizens? I visited a particular FRSC office with my wife to renew our driver's license. They could not even put on their generator. They were complaining about fuel. You get to some of these government agencies, they tell you the photocopier is not working, that there's no electricity. I think we should wake up and get serious and make the business environment friendly. There are things that should be available to citizens. So citizens must bear the cost of everything. Fuel subsidy is gone. The revenue that came in shared to states. When will we begin to enjoy the government? And that is on one side. So I just advise the government, please, if you want to produce quality materials. And by extension, I'm asking, what is the role of FRSC in all this? You travel in Nigeria by road, you see them at the bad portions of the road. And I've asked some of them, why? What is the meaning of road safety?
It enables vehicles to move slowly and then extort.
But it contradicts the meaning of road safety, which means you must notify the relevant agency to come and fix that road for safety. And that is on one side. On the borrowing of the local government, there is what you call conditioning in industrial psychology. And I think Nigeria is just conditioned to borrowing. And that was my concern when this local government autonomy came in. There is no accountability in Nigeria. So people just go into office, they borrow, and they disappear. And no one calls them back to come and account for it. And I have my precedents here. As at March 2015, the total indebtedness of Nigeria was about 12.12 trillion naira. As at May 2025, it's in the threshold of about 180-something trillion naira, despite the fact that the fuel subsidy was removed. And the scripture says that the borrower is a slave to the lender, whether they are banks or not. The banks aspect, I was in the banking sector, so I can let you know that sometimes there are some satanic collaborations. Exactly. Just to, what killed National Bank in this country? So somebody must be held to accountability, because all these trillions and trillions, you can imagine, 4 trillion naira, we hear, if properly deployed, then the nation should be in a better position. And that is why, recently I've driven around and I've seen posters of those who are contesting to be local government chairmen and councillors. And I said, there's money in this country. And I asked myself, if I spend this much, and my supporters spend this much, let's even assume my supporters, when I get into office, will I not say to them?
Of course. You have to.
So will this money get to develop the communities? And in the absence of that, we should just be borrowing, digging our holes deeper. And I hope the government will look in that direction. And finally, when it comes to accountability, Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. And so when funds are made available, are they deployed for it? In some local government areas, it is when the governor announces that he is visiting that local government that they will go and get Caterpillar, clear the road. The potholes will disappear. The moment the governor leaves, everything is back to shape. But having said that, let me commend the Ogun State governor, Governor Prince Dapo Abiodun. There is this Akute community in Lagos that the day I drove on that road, I was traumatized. But I went there last week and it's now a sweet ride. That's what we are talking about. Let's develop Nigeria. And I want to appeal to the National Assembly. When we are talking about state borrowing, local government borrowing, can we look at the exclusive legislative list? Can Niger Delta manage their oil, contribute to the central port? Can Ondo manage the second largest deposit of bitumen in the world that is in that region? Can Zamfara manage their gold? Look at all this to create commonwealth for common good. But when we just think, bring the money, let's share it, and somebody is commissioning 3 poles of electricity and it's advertised everywhere and they're rejoicing and dancing, I don't think that will take us anywhere in Africa. So
I think you should send the question to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself, because in 2011, and I can say this authoritatively, because in one book I edited for him, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the struggle for true federalism. So Bola Ahmed Tinubu knows that he's struggling for true federalism. And what you are now raising is about true federalism. Let people at least control their resources in the areas and then pay tax to the federal government.
It's the National Assembly that will do that. Buhari told us during his tenure when we were talking about restructuring, and I quite agree with that. If the National Assembly rises up tomorrow and that there should be true federalism in Nigeria, it should start with them. But it's the political will then.
Ologun, you cannot be more correct on Ogun State with your reference to the roads that Governor Abiodun has fixed in the Akute area of Ogun State. After all, it's a gateway state. Ogun State leads, others follow.
Yeah. I was just doing my own innocent. You have leverage on it.
That road has been there for a long time. I'm happy
Doctor will wash it for us. I had a nice ride on that road.
Anyway, let's take another topic, but we'll still go to the United States. In the United States, President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation banning the citizens of 12 countries from entering the United States, saying the move was needed to protect Americans against foreign terrorists and other security threats. The directive is part of an immigration crackdown Trump launched this year at the start of his second term, which has included the deportation to El Salvador of hundreds of Venezuelans suspected of being gang members, as well as efforts to deny enrollment of some foreign students and the deportation of others. In a related development, an anti-ICE protest in New York descended into a running battle early Sunday between protesters and NYPD officers and led to the arrest of more than 20 persons. Well, as we know, citizens of Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen have been banned from coming to the United States. Some have partial restriction. Sierra Leone, Cuba, Laos, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. But exceptions are recognized. If you have family that is living in the United States, then you have to have proof of DNA compliance. If you already have visa to the United States, if you're an athlete going to the United States for international competitions. Otherwise, all of these persons from these countries are restricted. We're on the list of the restricted persons and of the banned persons where Nigeria is not there. But Sierra Leone and Togo are on that list. What does it say about the temperament of President Trump? He did it in his first coming, I think in 2017, and then the Biden administration vacated that in 2021. Now he's back in office, his second time, and he has, reintroduced that policy of restriction. which marks, in my view, of provincialism, of isolationism, of protectionism. Mr. Ologun, let me come to you.
You know, like you said, Donald Trump will always be Donald Trump. He did it during his first term. Biden knocked it off his back now. And his argument is clear that nations that are connected with terrorism should not be given free space in the U.S. You know, I recall when some Syrians in the UK went back home, by the time they returned to the UK, they had to be taken through de-radicalization. But some countries are firing back, even saying that the US is not safe for them and that these policies are not the best of the policies. But I think the signal to the world is just to wake up and see how you also can make your nation great. And I know that within the United States of America, the judiciary and other stakeholders are holding Trump to accountability that, hey, as you are ruling out all this, look at the ban on the students in Harvard, foreign students in Harvard and everything. So they are trying to checkmate him. But by and large, this man has not hidden his intention. That is America first. And if you know the impact of some high-tension terroristic nations on some countries, you want to protect your people. But I know that, like in other areas, like the tariff and things like that, and the American system will look at how it can impact them negatively and rein in him. What I know is that, to a large extent, some people are not free to move around in the U.S. because there is a serious clampdown on a group of persons. And for those like the Venezuelans who he has perceived as being a threat to security in the land, they are really dealing with them. So I wish him the best. And again, another lesson for us to scan our environment and see that our environment is not conducive for those who will come and torment us. We are still battling with bandits and different kinds of terrorists in Nigeria. So I wish him and America the best and the nations to learn their lessons and reposition for a greater future.
Well, Professor Aworawo.
Well, the statement Trump will always be Trump. I vehemently disagree with that position. Trump will always be Trump. And then what? The parents also are immigrants. This week, the German Chancellor visited the US and embarrassed Trump by showing him the
grandfather.
Yes, the birth certificate, and to make him know that he too, just as he did to Ramaphosa by switching off the lights and then showing him people purportedly being killed, which is not even true. This one showed him a genuine certificate that to remind him that while you are trying to say people should not come, your forefathers also came here. People must always move. We have even had Americans moving somewhere else. In the course of the week, one lady, an American, said she was no longer happy with staying in the US. She moved to Mexico. And that after over 20 years...
An academy.
Yes, she's happier, far happier than, how things were for her when she was in the US. People always move for different reasons. And this idea of we ban this, we ban that, is antediluvian. To think that, the best way to proceed is for you to ban this, ban that. And in any case, it's not even based on knowledge. It's not based on fact. What the facts reveal is that the percentage of people from these countries carrying out terrorist activity in the US is infinitesimal. They are not, these people calling terrorists, they are not the major terrorists in the US. In fact, Latinos, you hardly find any of them engage in terrorist activities. But, it is what it is. It is just a fulfillment of his desire to, push some people away, sense of, and, well, is Trump not racist? Well, the question is I leave that, up in the air. Because when you also look at the countries that have been, prevented from coming and all that, and you begin to wonder whether there is no element of racism also in the whole thing. But the other side to it, where I agree with Barrister Ologun, is that people should put their house together in their different countries, because whether we like it or not, the major reason people are moving is because things are not well in their own country. So they want to go to the US to, have the American dream. So if this would inspire these countries, people to do better, to ensure that things are, well put in place, so people have less reason to want to move, that would just be fine. But we must thank China. I just imagine what the world will have been, or what Trump will have turned the world to, but for China. China has just pushed back and has helped the whole world, which also gives credence to the point you are making that if more and more countries do well, it will be difficult for one country to want to ride roughshod of all the other countries. All of these, even the tariffs, the position of China and the inability to push China beyond a particular point has helped other countries of the world in the way these tariffs have been carried out. Otherwise, the US will just march over everybody else, at least the US under Trump. But let us see how it goes. China has fired back by saying that all Americans also should leave. No American will be allowed to come to Chad. What is in the US anyway? The terrorist country, a country where somebody will just carry a gun and shoot and kill people. That doesn't happen in Chad. Anyway, all of these are not good for the global stability and for the community of nations that we seek to have.
Prof. Professor Quintero.
You see, we talk about Donald Trump many times, but I've said that if you have a Donald Trump that does not know his onions, if you have a president that the Americans themselves decided to vote as their leader, there's a problem. The problem is not with Donald Trump per se. Those who saw in him, who still see in him as a leader, those are the people we should be interrogating. Because I said earlier on that Donald Trump is a problem unto himself. He cannot see clearly. All right? At best, his policies are very myopic. Now, impression is being given that it's because of terrorism. Terrorist-related countries, he's now trying to prevent people from coming there. Is the problem terrorism? Chad is on the list. Is it because of terrorism in Chad that they are listed? Is Togo a terrorist country? Is Sierra Leone part of the something? Are you going to liken Sierra Leone to Afghanistan? No. I can agree with his earlier point that, look, we are controlling immigration because we do not want illegal immigrants. That one will be tenable. We want you to live within the framework of the law. That one will be tenable. So in this case, if we are to talk about terrorism itself, Boko Haram terrorism, they are more omnipresent in Nigeria than in Togo, than in Sierra Leone. They should have actually looked at who are the people coming from Nigeria. But it's not like that. So what is happening in this particular case is that, look, countries that have decided to apply the principle of reciprocity. Chad sent the foreign military bases. They sent them packing. Niger did that. And the same is true of Burkina Faso and Mali, sending them away. Now they are angered. And this time they want to show that, look, you pointing accusing fingers at us, let us find a way of telling you that we are still there. But you see, at the end of the day, this thing will backfire. They cannot sanction Nigeria, they cannot list Nigeria, because Nigerians in the United States are not this time fantastically corrupt, but they are fantastically contributing to the societal development there. In the medical world, Nigerians are there. All right? Engineering, call it any strategic area, Nigerians are there. And they are not interested in, knowledge-driven immigrants. So that can be understood. In essence, I think that, to borrow the words of Jimmy Cliff, time will tell. Time will tell. Donald Trump cannot go too far. You see, by the time you are talking about not giving visa, you are restricting, the immigrants from certain countries. I can tell you that the day we stop taking development aid from any foreign country, that is the beginning of wisdom and beginning of development, because they say necessity. So when you task the Nigerian, put him in difficult situation, I can tell you that Nigerian will come back heavy. Refuse a Nigerian visa in the morning. In the afternoon, he collects another passport. In the evening, he's in another country. And he will still go back to the same something. So God has gifted, the Nigerians of today, especially not the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs, the youth of today, they just work on technology. They are no longer thinking hard. The way we old generations are going about it. The issue now is that sooner than later, this technologizing of the youth will be detrimental to the long-term development of black people in the world. Because now, they are no longer reading books. Nobody is interested. Nobody is doing that. Anything you want, AI, ChatGPT, and so on and so forth, it will give you a ready-made answer. No, it cannot go on that.
Earlier in the week, Prof, I've added a caveat that under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, 1963,
yes,
the issuance of visas, the rejection of visas, the limiting of consular privileges is at the discretion of the owner of the visa. So it's not automatic that a country has to give you a visa. But you made a point about reciprocity, as Chad has done. That's the relief that is available under the Vienna Convention to the sending state. Well, sending will be too much, to the country of origin. That's what it is. But that does not justify Trump, who is, as you have said, being racist, being isolationist, and all of that.
No, you see, you are right. You are quite right. What? You are right, but you see, we need to get one thing correct and rightly. As first of all provided in the 1961 convention, that one is on diplomatic relations.
Diplomatic relations.
Now,
63
yes,
is
because
consular
they are interconnected.
Yes.
The 1963 Vienna Convention on Consular Relations made it clear that, look, like the passport you hold is the authorization by your country recommending you to another country that you are our citizen. They are your guarantor. That's the passport. Now that passport cannot enable you to go to another country without the visa. That is where you are right to say, look, all right, on the basis of the recommendation of your government, we will consider that you are good enough to be given this particular visa. The visa, even if it is given, it does not mean you will still be allowed entry at the point of entry. In between the time of issuance of the visa and your time of arrival, if you have not committed any crime, any something, you will go. So in this case, you see, the beauty of your point is to the extent that you can issue and you can refuse to issue, and without any country, any sovereign country querying you, you are there.
Okay, Prof. No, it's as clear as daylight. Visas are issued at the discretion of the host country. However, what we condemn is Donald Trump's relationship with the world and his excesses. Let's take something on a somber note. With the passing this week of two of the most accomplished personalities of contemporary Nigeria, Former Chief Justice of the Federation, Justice Mohammed Lawal Uwais, who died at the age of 89, and former Minister of Petroleum, Professor Jibril Aminu, who was 85 at the time of his passing. Justice Uwais, who served as Chief Justice for 11 years between 1995 through 2006, died in Abuja on Friday. The late jurist, born on June 12, 1936, chaired the Electoral Reform Commission established by President Umar Yar'Adua, which report recommended critical reforms to Nigeria's electoral system in 2008. Meanwhile, the remains of Professor Jibril Aminu, who in his capacity as Nigeria's oil minister, chaired several critical sections of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, have been laid to rest in his hometown in Song local government area of Adamawa State. Well, maybe souls of the departed rest in peace. But there is no doubt that both gentlemen made an impact, significant impact on the course of Nigeria's development. Justice Mohammed Uwais, people are still talking today, till tomorrow, about the Uwais Commission report. We are right at this moment again where electoral reform has become another major subject. And people will continue to talk about electoral reform and still the recommendations of that Uwais committee, which we have not done anything about. Professor Jibril Aminu, also known as Jibril's Song, because of where he comes from, was also a senator. In the Senate of the Federal Republic, 2003 to 2011. Before then, he was Nigeria's ambassador to the United States. In the 70s, 78 to 79 or 81, he was executive secretary of the Nigerian Universities Commission. He was also, above all, very distinguished in his chosen field of medicine, having graduated top of his class from the University of Ibadan in 1972. He subsequently became a fellow of the West African College of Physicians, fellow of the Nigerian Postgraduate Medical College, fellow of the Royal Society of Physicians in London. And, just as he was intellectually fecund, he was also very prolific on the private front, fathered 9 children, 2 wives, and distinguished himself. He died at 85. Both men lived long, and they were able to leave a very strong legacy of achievements and an example of commitment to whatever they laid their hands upon. Mr. Ologun, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. With due respect to our new national anthem, let me borrow from the old national anthem that the labors of our heroes past shall not be in vain. These are men who lived to show good examples and make powerful recommendations. I still remember the Okuta panel reports and all this. So what do we do with all these prescriptions to position Nigeria on the pedestal of development should be the big question. We say they have come, they have sinned, and they have conquered. And I always say this, it's only God that will not leave the stage. So condolences to the families and to the nation, praying that we take good lessons from the enviable lives they have lived to see how we can make the future brighter for the nation.
Yeah, we can only express our condolences to the families of former Chief Justice Uwais and Professor Jibril Aminu. They were all over the place. It is noteworthy that former Justice Uwais is remembered more for what he did after he retired than all the long years he served as Chief Justice. That reform, and it speaks to the nature of our elections, and we keep talking about it because the reports, many of the issues identified have not been implemented, and so our elections are still are still below standards, not anywhere near where they should be. So condolences to his family. And Professor Jibril Aminu was Executive Secretary of National Universities Commission. Professor Jide Oshitokun always tells me that it was during his time at the NUC that he was appointed and sent to Canada, and that it was someone who was very broad-minded, who didn't mind where anybody came from, who paid attention to merit in his activities. So it was one of the things that made me to follow through. He was all over the place. He was Minister of Education, OPEC, petroleum, all over the place. I had a very long career and extensive impact on different aspects of Nigerian life. So we appreciate him. Of course, we hope that the labors of these people will not be in vain. And the only way they will not be in vain is what we do at this point. How well we contribute to making the country develop. Those are the things that would not make the labors of these people to be a waste. So condolences to their families, and we hope they will have the strength to be able to cope with the tragedy. It doesn't matter how old one is. Once one dies, the loved ones must miss the person.
Well,
I think we should be talking more about celebration than talking about condolences. Condolences, yes. You see, when people lived well, when they have legacy, we should be talking, about their integrity, about their legacy. These are people that have done very well in their life. And it is a cause for celebration. People who love patriotism, people who love deed of hard work, people who want a Nigeria that is completely free from political chicanery. These two people, all right, they left a life that is worth emulating. Why is? Now, for instance, we are talking about the reforms. He gave different recommendations, but they cannot follow, they cannot do it. Why? Because the political will is not there. But now, they say he's dead. He's not dead. Because his ideas you can never kill. Ideas never die. His ideas are still there. And he's now provoking, he's now touching those people in power. Election problems. What is difficult in implementing what he has recommended? What is it? So consequently, you can see that at the end of the day, he lived well. Now, my own is to pray to God that for ways the family he left behind, God just be with them so that that legacy can be sustained by the people he left behind. For Jibril Aminu, he's a medical, political, and I would say diplomatical, intellectual patriot. And Reuben Abati said it all as an intellectual. He's a professor. Medically, he did well in UI. Minister of Education, Minister of Petroleum, Senator. He combined all that. And when you look at his record, his attitude complements his behavior. So he has a very pleasant attitudinal behavior that is very impressive. Gentlemanly, soft-spoken, and at times, I had the opportunity of speaking with him, at the reception. He does not neglect. He does not say you are a small man all along. He relates very happily. I was very happy that, look, he extended handshake to me first. And I was very happy that, look, I shaking hand with Jibril Aminu. No, I'm very happy. God, in his infinite mercy, will bless the families left behind. And I know quite well that when you say rest in peace, Why would he not rest in peace? Already he's resting in peace because their handworks are clean. They have done very well. They left good things there. So people who do well before they die, they don't need to fear dying. They will go to heaven just truthfully.
Well, that was just made a journey well. Okay. Well, very quickly, let's go to South Korea. South Korea this week handed a decisive victory to opposition candidate Lee Jae-myung 6 months after his predecessor's martial law bid failed. The brief, disastrous move had set off huge protests and ended former President Yoon Suk-yeol's career. Impeached and removed from office, he still faces criminal charges for abusing his power. But the political chaos that followed means victorious Lee's biggest challenge is still ahead of him. He must unite a polarized country that is still reeling from the political crisis. The new president also faces challenges abroad. Crucially, negotiating a trade deal with the United States President Donald Trump to soften the blow of tariffs from South Korea's closest ally. You also have to worry about balancing relationships with China and also with the closest neighbor, North Korea. But he has promised that he's focused on unity, and he has set up a committee to look at the economy, to take a look at commercial law, to give more powers to minority shareholders in the companies. But he has issues of his own on the personal front. But now he has presidential immunity. Professor Aworawo, let me start with you.
Well, I congratulate him. Congratulate Lee for his emergence. It was very dramatic in the course of that martial law that was proclaimed. It was one that jumped the fence and then started filming, the proceedings, and then popularized what happens, and people just gathered together to do what they did. So I congratulate him. Having said that, I also want to draw attention to the fact that the presidency in South Korea for quite some time now has been like a banana peel. So we need to be very careful. President Park, for a few mistakes here and there, didn't end well. And of course, the most recent is President Yoon, who declared a martial law, and of course with catastrophic consequences. We need to be careful. If he sticks to the regulations and what the law says, he won't have problems. He grew from the ranks. He was from a very poor home. He was a factory worker even, who was injured in the factory. And of course, he went ahead to become a lawyer. So everything that a man can experience, he has experienced. So I think he has enough experience to be able to pilot South Korea in the right direction. And of course, he should also remember that South Koreans are very impatient with people who can perform. And so he needs to work energetically. He needs to be perceptive. If he does all of this, he will do well. So we can only wish him well the presidency.
Well, very quickly, Mr. Ologun.
Thank you. It's a narrative of resilience. Like Prof mentioned, when he wasn't a factory worker, he wasn't underage. And he's a man who has boldly confronted the challenges of life, because in the recent crisis in South Korea, this man has been harassed with different kinds of criminal allegations, but he has remained stout. And the South Koreans have come out to say, this is the person we want. And obviously, he has to deal with the economic situation in South Korea. He has to deal with the issue of education and, of course, galvanizing the international relations to position South Korea on the path of prosperity. And, of course, to handle North Korea and their nuclearization effectively, and we wish him the best. But then, to say uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. So while rejoicing at this victory, he should be sober and vigilant to ensure that the expectations of the citizens who have queued behind him are met, so that it won't just end up in promises. Those promises, he must walk his talk to deliver the dividends of democracy to them. So congratulations to Leon.
I join my other colleagues in congratulating him for 3 points. One, I think he's really a man of destiny. He was a victim of a knife, assassination attempt. All right? He narrowly missed that, not knowing that he will still become the leader, the president. Secondly, I am enthused at the promises he made. They are quite good. He wants, to reconcile with neighbors. He wants to reopen discussion with North Korea. He promised, to sustain. In fact, he wants a stronger alliance with the United States. He wants to renew strengthen relationship with China and all this. I think this is commendable. But the most important point he raised is his statement, and I quote, he said, "It is better to win without fighting than to win in a fight." He added, I quote again, "A peace with no need to fight is the best security." And I think he's looking at the future from a non-belligerent approach. It's commendable. May God help him.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ologun. Thank you, Professor Aworawo, and thank you, Professor Akintere. Wow. It's good to see you again. I hope you do this more frequently. And may I remind you that when next you are coming around, please, there should be implications. And I would like to define the implications. They produce the best palm wine in his hometown. The last time I was there, we finished two kegs.
Where is the hometown?
We finished 2 kegs in Ondo State.
Ologun.
You've not been to Okakoko in Ondo State, the capital of the world.
No. I've tasted palm wine from his own.
You need to taste the one from Okakoko.
Are we having competition of power? Bring your own. Let him bring his own.
You don't need any passport or visa to come to Ashivas University. They now
they also have palm wine in Owo.
There's absolutely nothing you will not find, not just in Owo Township itself. In Ashivas University, you can buy yam, you can buy tomato, you can buy palm wine. Everything is there. Okay. The environment is completely oxygenated.
Okay.
And you will enjoy.
Okay, all of you should bring palm wine. As implications. Anyway, to show that Nigeria is really doing well with agriculture under the watch of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You've been watching This Day Live, this Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching.